Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack, the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches. Well, this is the first Sunday of Advent, Sunday where we start getting ready for the coming of Jesus at Christmas. Advent is a long period of waiting, 4 weeks of waiting, of getting ready. One scholar, when they talk about Advent, likens it to cleaning the house, so that you can welcome the guest into your house, who's Jesus. And so today, I want to help us get along in this Advent season with a poem. I'm going to start off with a poem, and this is called In December Darkness. It's by a woman named Ann Weems. She writes, "The whole world waits in December darkness for a glimpse of the light of God. Even those who snarl humbug and chase away the carolers have been seen looking toward the skies. The one who declared he never would forgive has forgiven. The one who left home has returned. And even wars are halted, if briefly, as the whole world looks starward. In the December darkness, we peer from our windows, watching for an angel with rainbow wings to announce the hope of the world." The hope of the world is, of course, a reference to Jesus and the coming of Christ at Christmas. But we have to do some serious waiting in darkness before we get to that, I think. So why do we celebrate Advent, and why is it important for us to celebrate Advent?
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party. Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just so into the Christmas spirit.
I know you are.
The tree, is your tree up?
It is.
Is it really?
It is.
Why? It's not Christmas.
I know. Why? Because my wife and my daughter and my son could all get together the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and that's the only Sunday between now and then when we're going to be able to put it up.
It's a schedule. Right.
Yeah.
So why celebrate Advent? Well, for one thing, I think that it makes us stop and take a breath.
Right.
You know, we've been headed toward Christmas since really the after school sales, or the before school sales, whatever they're called.
Yeah, we didn't even get out of Halloween before it started.
Well, that's right. And so the decorations go up in the stores. There are radio stations that start playing Christmas music in November. Is it to celebrate the birth of Jesus? I don't think so. Hallmark movies they only have one plot. And they tell that story with this
over and over again.
Yeah, with different characters, different things, but there's always a dog, and there's always a family, and there's always a tree, and there's always hope at the end, which is wonderful, but that starts kind of before Thanksgiving too. Then Thanksgiving comes, and it came as early as it can possibly come.
Exactly.
This time.
Yeah.
Which means that those Christmas sales beginning on Thanksgiving or the day after, they became very early this year too. So in the midst of all of this, and the music that we hear, I call this the season of dead singers. Burl Ives, Mel Torme, Gene Autry, these guys have been dead for years, but the only time we hear them on the radio is Christmas.
Bing Crosby.
So every once in a while, it's good for us to wait and say, just take a breath. It's the adult thing to be patient. And I think it's a good thing for us to have Advent, to be patient for a while, just to ease into the season intentionally, thoughtfully, and prayerfully.
Well, my guest today is no stranger to Encounter.
Yes, I'm pretty much stranger than most.
Well, you are stranger, yes, but he's been on Encounter as our host for many, many years, Jeff Kellam. So Jeff, we're talking about Advent and why we should celebrate Advent. And Advent seems to be, like you were suggesting, Christmas's lesser brother. It's like Yeah, we know Christmas is there because it's star-spangled and light-filled and the rest of that. Advent, you light a candle every week. You're supposed to be growing toward Christmas.
Yeah.
And waiting patiently and pacing yourself, I think is a part of it too.
That's a great way to put it.
So how does, and when you were talking about prayer and needing to spend some time disconnected from perhaps the madness that surrounds Christmas at times. So how does Advent help us enter into prayer?
Well, I think for one thing, I mentioned intentionality.
Right.
As let's talk about the meaning of the word Advent. It means coming.
Right.
And coming is not, it's arrived, it's coming. It's always on its way. And so to ease into that season, one candle at a time, and we're referring to the Advent wreath, which is one of the ways that we kind of signal to a congregation, we're in the first week, we're in the second week, third. It's an increasing light toward that Christmas day and the birth of Jesus. When you grew up in your church tradition, did you have Advent?
No.
I didn't either.
No.
And I'm a Presbyterian.
Yeah.
And I don't remember this growing up at Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. We just kind of, I guess December came and we started singing Christmas carols.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the sermons were all leading us on the Christmas journey already. But the liturgical churches, the Roman Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Episcopal Church, and now the Methodist Church, and the Presbyterians, we've gotten on board with this liturgical thing so that our Christmas is a little bit different, I think, than the cultural Christmas.
Right.
You know, isn't there a cultural Christmas that you don't have to be Christian to celebrate Christmas? Put up a tree, light up the, But for the Christian, the faithful person heading toward December 25th, this is where we kind of say, let's be intentionally Christian about this and look at the scriptures that recapitulate the story that lead us on, and let's sing about it, but let's not sing carols just yet. Let's sing about the preparation. Some churches are using that thing from Godspell, preparing the way of the Lord.
Right.
And that preparation, I think, is what this is all about.
And prayer is one of the ways that we prepare.
Yeah.
And when we enter into prayer, we're intentionally asking God to come into our celebration, asking God to forgive the places that need forgiveness, to clean out the areas that need to be cleaned out, so that we can welcome the Christ child at Christmas. And it's interesting to me that what we, like when we're talking like that, we're the scriptures that lead up to Christmas tend to be filled with Christ returning, and we often get caught up in the hype around that, the late great Planet Earth or the Left Behind series or something like that, as a way of trying to translate it.
The first couple of weeks have some really scary passages.
Oh yeah.
About the end times, and it's about it's reminding us that Jesus has come. We've been celebrating that in the liturgical year up until this beginning. By the way, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
This is the liturgical year beginning now, the first Sunday of Advent.
Right.
But now these first passages are the apocalyptic vision of the second. We're thinking about the second coming in light of the first. And I read a wonderful quote. I actually brought some notes with me.
Oh, okay.
It says, in the apocalyptic language, let's just talk about that for a moment. It's the stars falling. My Lord, what a morning.
Yeah.
It's those things that are frightening to us and think the world's coming to an end, but it's really coming to a beginning. What apocalyptic language does, according to Barbara Gaventa, who's a biblical scholar, it uses unimaginatively large language to anticipate unimaginatively important events.
Exactly.
Which reminds us that this is a cosmic thing. This isn't just warm feelings around the Christmas tree in our living room. This is a cosmic thing.
Right. And so for instance, the Luke passage for this coming Sunday that most people will hear if they're in church on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's about the sun and the moon darkening, the coming of the gloom, and they're asking what are the signs of the times, and when will these things happen is a question that they're asked. And this disorientation is this disorientation experience is kind of preceded by the disciples who walk in and see this massive temple,
right.
And they see how beautiful the temple is and how magnificent this structure is, and they look at Jesus and say, Master, aren't these buildings important and beautiful, and can't you just see that? And then Jesus says to him, well, not one stone is going to be left upon another. And then he goes into this huge apocalyptic understanding of reading the signs of the times as a way of talking about how the temple is going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
So it is a disorientation experience. It's supposed to make you feel as if you're not all together.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's the echo of I shall make all things new.
Right.
And there can't be anything more new than this story of this humble birth in a manger, and then this glorious resurrection at the end of Jesus' life and the beginning of a new one. And then as we look at how our lives are shaped by that story, I find it hard to come to grips with the second coming until I've come to grips with the first coming.
Exactly.
And living by the words and the life and teachings of Jesus, this helps me understand the meaning of these oracles, these ancient things that were, when these writings were recorded for us, this was at least 2,000 years ago, but generation before generation then.
Right.
The earth was flat. The stars were like punctures in a big canopy overhead. Yeah. They didn't understand that we live in a universe of billions and billions of stars, as Carl Sagan used to say. This cosmos, this whole Christmas thing is bigger than we can imagine.
And that bigness of it and our relative smallness in comparison to the transcendence of God, and the universe and our place within it. How does understanding that help us understand Christmas a bit better, or Advent a bit better?
When we approach all of these readings that we're going to have in the next 4 weeks, as we light candle by candle by candle, I think what I see coming is more and more light into the world. And I don't mean just physical light, but the light of understanding. And so the beauty of the liturgical year is to retell these stories so that every year as we grow and mature, we understand them better, and we understand ourselves better, and we understand our relationship to one another better.
Right.
So that I don't see the border crossings, for example, in Texas.
Exactly.
I see these Roman Catholic pilgrims from south of the border as my brothers and sisters in Christ. And so what is done to them is done to me. This is part of the fabric of what it means to be a Christian before being an American, before being a New Yorker. Who is Christ in my life, and how do I see Christ in these people? And not only those people, but let's look at the food desert in Binghamton.
Right.
Or let's look at the prisoners in the jail, in the Broome County Jail. We're part of a family together.
And what does it mean to bring Christ into the food desert, or into the jail, or into the community of people by the border?
Yeah.
Where does Christ stand? How does Christ grieve? How does Christ work? Those are important theological questions for us to answer through Advent.
Sure. And I think that piece from Matthew 25, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you at the border?
Yeah. Or when do we even pause to see you at all?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, in this season, and I don't want to sound like Scrooge or the
Right.
Grinch here, because that's a popular thing for us preachers to do, is to get in the pulpit on Sunday morning during Advent and shake our finger at the consumerism. I can be Brueggemannian and shake my prophetic finger at the consumerism and the greed of our society. That's a reference to Walter Brueggemann, who's one of my favorite theologians,
One of mine too.
biblical scholars. But I think we also know that this is our culture. This is the way we grew up. And what I think we're trying to do is to disorient ourselves from that, distance ourselves from that, so that we can be reoriented toward the new life that Jesus offers, the new thing that God is trying to do.
My guest today is Jeff Kellam. We're talking about Advent and its importance for us Christians to celebrate.
Yeah.
I just got the Christian Century, the newest Christian Century, and the entire magazine is set on the theme of return.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's this story at the beginning of the return section where this woman, she's now a pastor, has to go home and deal with her stepmother, who had treated her as if she was Cinderella, and when she had gotten remarried to her husband. And then through her stepmother's battle with cancer, she had to learn to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to learn to accept her for who she is. And there's this one powerful point where the stepmother, she's saying to her stepmother, "No, you did as well as you could have under the circumstances. We had no role models. There was no book on how to be a family in 1950s, with you having suffered a divorce, me having suffered a mom who left me, and a dad who was a powerful figure." She said, "I think you were a good mom." And the mother, when she's leaving the room, says, "Yeah, I think you were a good daughter too."
Yeah.
And this powerful moment was only possible because of the return.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, this return is exactly what we're talking about, right? It's finding the tenderness in the midst of the darkness.
Yeah.
And being able to return to Christ, or return to your faith and find meaning in it.
Finding the root or the foundation of what this is all about. The Christmas cards say the reason for the season. It's really looking at what God meant by sending this Savior after years of prophecy in the Old about the coming of Messiah, and now we look for that second coming, the return, which is what some of these scripture passages are about. Advent began as a 3-week preparation for baptism at Epiphany.
Right.
And that was a very penitential season. That's why we wear purple, or use purple as the vestments and so on during Advent. And then during the 4th century, Advent had evolved into a period of preparation for the coming of Christ as the judge. Mm-hmm. The mood was penitential, and it was not quite the dust and ashes of Lent,
right?
But it was humbling ourselves.
Right.
Waiting for and humbling ourselves to go with the shepherds who were humble, to be in a place where the homeless would find a place for a berth. There's such humility in this Christmas thing that's kind of overwhelmed once again by shopping.
We don't understand at times the political issue that's involved in Christmas. So when the wise men, for instance, they go to the Christ child, we kind of glamorize that. We've made it into the story of gift giving. Yeah. And it's why we give gifts to each other, because we're following the way of the Magi. So we end up giving gifts. But we forget that the wise men went to Herod and threw Jerusalem into a tizzy. And then Herod, then after he hears about this Christ child, says to them, who is he that, if you find this King of the Jews, make sure you come back to me so that I can worship him too.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, know what I mean?
Right.
And then in the following, then after Christmas, we get into the Matthew passages where you have the slaughter of the innocents and Herod showing the depth of the type of worship he was really talking about, where all children under a certain age die. So we tend to take that whole Christmas thing and we take it out and we've mythologized it. We've made it into just another piece of the consumeristic kind of experience, but we haven't really looked at what the underlying causes or the issues were in that first Christmas.
Yeah.
And Advent helps us understand it a bit more, doesn't it?
It is this Christmas is you mentioned the politics of it, that it is a disruption of the world as it is, which is represented by Herod.
Right.
Once again, so that this new light shines and says, this is what hope and peace and justice look like in a man,
right,
in a human being, one among us, Emmanuel, God with us. There is a reminder in those stories, that, we've moved into Epiphany already, and there's Epiphany is, wow, a new light shines, a new idea. I've had an epiphany. And so through that season of Epiphany, we see these places where God breaks through again. There's that wonderful passage where the people are asking for God to break through. Why don't you break through the heavens and come? And that plea is a universal prayer.
Well, that the mountains would tremble before you.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things that are eternal, these mountains that are made of granite, that they would tremble and the world would come under your rule, I guess.
What a great video game that would be for Christmas.
It would be great. It would be cool. Trembling Mountain.
That's right.
Yeah. So, as we're getting ready to celebrate Advent, what are some of the major themes that you want to leave our audience with?
Well, one of the symbols is the Advent wreath. Another is the Advent calendar. I meant to bring one today.
Right.
I found one in a store in Owego that had reverent pictures on it. Not Frosty the Snowman, but by reverent, and I won't know till we open it up day by day. But that's that very slow, day by day process. I love the idea of an Advent calendar that says, here's a little piece of the story, but there's more to come.
Right.
There's another piece of the story, but there's more to come. And that more to come is, I think, what we live for day by day. More justice to come. There is more love to experience. There is more joy yet to be. And it's not all here today. It won't be all here on December 25th, but it's to come.
And I don't think that you have to necessarily throw out the Christmas carol out of worship to get at that. So an occasional Christmas carol actually is not a bad idea.
Well, in terms of worship, if we decorate the sanctuary a little bit, week by week in Advent, so that by Christmas now it's all there. If we sing the carols, which ones fit with today's readings?
Right.
I don't want to sing Joy to the World, the Lord has come on December 2nd.
Right.
I want to save that one.
Maybe save it for this joy the week where you talk about joy, light the pink candle or something.
Yeah. And which was a break in the fast originally.
Right.
That's why we have that break, that the joy passages of that day to say, hey, you know what? We're fasting, but we can have a feast today.
Well, that's one of the reasons why they call it joyful waiting, right? It's more, we're waiting, but you don't have to be somber in your wait. You can experience joy in the midst of waiting.
Yeah. We had in one church, Joan and I designed an Advent banner so that each day you would take one piece off and another and another and another. And at the bottom it said Advent, but on Christmas you tore it off and it says Emmanuel. So Dave, once again, it's an intentional taking our time to get there, to breathe during the season, to breathe in the breath of the Spirit, to see where we're going next. And I think Advent is the gift of the church as an antidote to the cultural Christmas that has almost worn us out by the time we get to the end of December.
And that's why you have such a big letdown after Christmas, because you've spent so much time preparing for it.
Yeah.
There's a book that I love. I love the title of it, if nothing more, but it's called Unplug the Christmas Machine. And the idea is, well, you need to offer some intentionality into your celebration of Christmas. If you want to get to Christmas, we're all going to get there one way or the other.
Yeah.
25th of December is going to happen. But if you're going to put in a little bit of intentionality, well, you better unplug it, and reinvent it and rethink it. And Advent helps us to be able to do that, to add meaning to our celebration.
Yeah, and unplugging as that other component of getting away from the electronics, and sitting quietly at the end of the day, perhaps, and saying, how am I going to move now closer to this season of peace, joy to the world, this glory to God in the highest, the cosmos, but peace on earth between me and my neighbor.
Well, Jeff, this has been a great conversation. We should do this more often.
Well, we could do it very easily when we can't find another guest.
Yeah, you know it. We can do it. But it's a great conversation, a great reminder for us of what Advent is all about. So I want to wish all of you a warm, a waiting, and a joyful Advent.